Right, Phil, I'm just going to show you the rig that I'm using today. It's nice and simple. I've got a 4-foot lead core leader. I've got a 2.5 ounce inline flat pair sliding up and down onto a size 8 rolling swivel. My actual hook length material is 12 pound fluorocarbon, and I've got that straight through to a 14mm bottom bait boilie.
So that's relatively simple.
Very simple.
Obviously effective.
It is very effective. Now the reason I use an inline, I'll just show you, because a lot of people use a lead on a lead clip. And what you get with a lead on a lead clip is a lot more movement. If that's your rig hanging off the end, it can do all of this before that lead's going to move. With an inline lead, the second a fish picks up this bait, it's got to move the weight of that lead. So in theory it should hook itself straight away.
Right, so it's effectively a bolt rig.
Exactly right, and there's two ways of setting this up. I'm going to show you the other way as well. That's how I'd normally fish it if I'm just in a snag-free environment. If you're fishing near snags, you can set it up so that it's called an outliner. And what you'd do is you'd literally just thread on your tail rubber. Okay, so no lead on there at all. Thread on your tail rubber, something like this, hopefully. There we go. Pull that all the way down to the swivel, and then the tail on the back of the lead will fit into there. Still slide it down.
And that's secure enough for the cast, no problem.
Yeah, what you do then is you pop your swivel in just like you normally would, if I can get it in there, like that, and it fits quite snug because it's got the lead core fitting in there with the swivel, so it's not just going to pop out. But what you've then got is when you get a fish, if you're near snags, 90% of the time it's that lead that's going to hit the snag. But what will happen is as the fish pulls, that will pop out, that gets stuck in the snag, drops off, and then you're pretty much free line into the fish.
So again, very fish-friendly rig to use.
Absolutely, yeah. Now I should also say as well, even when you're using that sliding up and down the lead core, because of the loop rather than not on the end of the lead core, that's going to slide off of there, as you just saw, no problem. So if you do crack off, you're not going to leave the fish dragging the lead around with it.
Fantastic. I was intrigued as well, when you just cast out there, I was having a look at the line that you're using, your main line on the reel.
Yep.
And you're using the Jurassic Don, aren't you?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Okay, this is a tremendous line, and it's available in 300 metre, 500 metre and 1000 metre spools. It's a very deep, almost red colour. And I'm told that that's the most invisible line to a carp.
Apparently so,
I'm not a carp, I'm only listening to what the experts are saying. But what I like about this line, and I'm sure you feel the same, is it's virtually memory free. I mean, that is a 15-pound monofilament, and there's literally no memory in that.
That's right.
Just the right amount of controlled elasticity, not a lot of elasticity to be fair.
Yep.
So that's a very, very positive line, and extremely strong on its knots, isn't it?
It's as strong as tow rope, and it sinks like a brick.
Yeah, so that's your Jurassic Don line, and that's good for carp fishing. It's also good for standard feeder fishing, etc., for the coarse angler too. I also noticed, Ben, that you talked about hook lengths just, and we do at Maver two types of hook length. This one that I'm showing to the camera now is what we call the Genesis Extreme hook length mono, which is a high quality monofilament but with a fluorocarbon outer. Again, it's very limited on its stretch. It almost feels like braid, so it's very, very positive. But being a fluorocarbon mono, it tends to be that little bit stronger on its knots. But you're not using that today, are you? You're using the pure fluorocarbon,
I am.
aren't you?
I tend to use that on more difficult waters because it's incredibly thin. A lot thinner than normal fluorocarbons. But today I'm using something quite strong, something that sinks. It goes invisible because it's fluorocarbon. And I'm using the Maver Carp brand rather than the Match brand stuff. Using it in 12-pound. I think I've used the heavier stuff as well when I'm fishing for much bigger fish, but the 12-pound is strong enough to cope with pretty much anything.
And how do you find that on its knots then, Ben?
Yeah, it's like most knots. As long as you wet them down, especially with fluorocarbon, but with any nylon or monofilament you should do. As long as you wet them down, pretty strong. I've never had a problem with it so far. I'm using the wide gapes rather than, I know Dell prefers using the long shanks, but I'm using the MV1's wide gapes. Incredibly sharp, unbelievably thin. They look like they're never going to be able to cope, but I've never bent one, I've never snapped one. They're unbelievably strong. And like I say, you just don't lose fish on these hooks.
Yeah, and I mean, your men down at your own fishery are using these hooks, aren't they? And what sort of fish have you seen this season landed on that hook?
Well, one of our field testers, Chris, uses them all the time, and he's just caught the biggest one in my lakes at 53 pound. 53 pound. So if they can cope with fish up to that big, they're good enough for me.
53 pound on a Maver hook.
There you go.
Okay.
The other thing I just wanted to talk about as well was the lead core that I spoke about earlier, because I'm using the ones that are ready made up in 4 feet, but you can also get it on a spool, which is quite good. You get 20 metres on here, which means you can make them up to any length you like. Here there's no snags, there's no unnecessary undulations on the bottom, so 4 feet is fine, but sometimes you might find you only want 2 feet, you might find you want even longer than that if you want to keep away from snags or use it as almost like a leader. So it's quite handy to have the 20 metre length spools as well, I think.
Gotcha. Fantastic.